Take a look at the papers. Because, of course, as you can imagine, this story is dominating, certainly papers worldwide, but definitely here in the UK. Gareth Barlow, our reporter, is in the newsroom with me. So, Gareth, if we start with the front page of today's Mirror, but actually the image is on many of the front pages, isn't it?
Yes, it's that striking image of the hearse containing the late Queen's coffin arriving at Buckingham Palace. And like you say, it's on the Times, the Daily Mail, the Sun, it continues. And it's been said that she had a hand in designing that vehicle, much like Prince Philip did for his funeral. And the front page of the Mirror here, led home by the lights of love, showing the thousands of people there with their torches on their phones. But let's just flick inside the paper now. Let's go to page 6 and 7 here, and a huge spread there about Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, talking about the fact that she accompanied the coffin containing her mother from Scotland down to London. And there's part of the statement that Princess Anne put out yesterday. I was fortunate, she writes, to share the last 24 hours of my dearest mother's life. It's been an honour and a privilege to accompany her on her final journeys, witnessing the love and respect shown by so many on these journeys. It's been humbling, she says, and uplifting. And pictures also of Princess Anne accompanying the coffin and leaving St Giles's Cathedral, which we saw so many people walk through and file past.
Absolutely. And I mean, this time yesterday we were watching the live footage of that going on, which is extraordinary. But I love the way she said it was uplifting, because we all are so conscious of them as a family grieving for a mother, for a grandmother, for a great-grandmother. So it was lovely that she said that we are in some ways giving them comfort, I suppose.
You see some of that on the next page, don't you? With King Charles and the Queen Consort Camilla smiles there on their tour of Northern Ireland.
Yes.
As this tour of the realm continues, as Charles goes to each of the 4 respective countries there. And he again hailing his mother's legacy, also following on there, not crossing the political divide and shaking hands there with various members of politics in Northern Ireland. But a slight blot on the day, which I think is referenced on the right-hand side of the page there, with the leaky pen incident.
Indeed, indeed. And this is kind of going a little, the video of this moment is I've seen it on Twitter today already, that it is getting a bit of airtime, as it were, where he was signing documents. He's had such an incredible schedule since the passing of his mum and mother, the monarch. And this leaky pen, I mean, he sort of lost his temper, didn't he, for a moment?
Yeah, and I think we all would. And he must be exhausted.
Absolutely.
Absolutely exhausted.
We completely understand that. And actually showed us he is human.
Yeah, totally. And
he's a normal human being.
If I got ink on my shirt before coming on television, I'd be furious. I'm not the monarch. So, you can understand that moment, just a little bit of a crack there.
And all the pressure as well that he is under at the moment. Right, moving on to the Times.
Yes, that same front page there, coming home to rest, it says. And on page 5, we kind of continue our focus here on the monarch, King Charles III, as he's now known. And a small story here on the bottom right-hand corner. Clarence House staff are put at risk of redundancy, and these are around 100 or so workers, it's being reported, including members of the finance team, it says here, communications team and office of the private secretaries. They've been notified that as Charles's role changes from being the Prince of Wales to now the monarch, the work of supporting his personal interests and some of his former activities will no longer be needed, and as such, indications that after this period of mourning there'll be a period of consultation and some of those roles may be closed. Now, some of these people may be given jobs elsewhere in the royal household, but they should prepare themselves for some post-closures. Been some criticism that the timing of this, though, I think is worth noting out.
Yes, absolutely. But also as well, it's important to note that he has been clear that he cannot continue in his role in those interests that he's had for so many years. And as these roles close at Clarence House, obviously all those charitable interests that he has will continue elsewhere, be run by others, and I understand his son, the now Prince of Wales, will be continuing in some of those roles as well.
Yes, and there's been enough time.
So it's a moving around, isn't it?
And plenty of preparation, I'm sure. And one picture just to pick out there, that school child who's utterly thrilled to have met the new king there.
Yes.
Just the joy, and like you say, referenced earlier.
And is that a corgi, I see?
And a corgi as well.
Is it a corgi?
Corgis feature quite heavily in the tour yesterday.
Yes, absolutely, as does Paddington Bear. But anyway, all right, on to the Daily Mail. Again, very similar, different shots, different angles of that moment when the hearse arrived at Buckingham Palace. It was a very, very moving moment for all of those that were there. But you wanted to have a look at page 18 and 17.
Yes, showing the depth of coverage. And this is images from 4:30, 5 o'clock local time yesterday morning of the rehearsal of the procession that we'll see today, later on Wednesday.
And you were there?
Yes, I was there, the dead of night, and as you're walking down towards the Mall, and it was taking place between Buckingham Palace and then Westminster Hall down by the Thames. And the dead of the night, London's relatively quiet at that time of day, but you could just, as you were walking closer, pick out the band that was playing. And as you got closer and closer, you then saw the Welsh Guards in their bearskin hats, those famous red tunics, leading that procession. But the thing that really caught me, and there's a picture of it here on the left-hand side, is of the horse-drawn gun carriage there, with the black drape, with a coffin that will be replicated and replaced by the coffin that will contain the Queen later today. And it was that moment, I think we talk so much about the events.
Yes.
It was that moment, seeing it in person,
yes,
that really struck home for me personally. And for members of the public had also gathered out to see what was going on. It was a very striking moment indeed.
And of course this will be taking place at 2:22 this afternoon, when the procession will go from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Hall, where she will lie in state, and the family will be walking alongside, won't they?
Yes, and obviously they weren't taking part in the rehearsal, but there
No.
were members of the royal household filling those gaps, and so we'll see the brothers, for example, walking alongside each other. We'll see an awful lot of very poignant imagery.
And it will bring back memories of Diana's funeral, actually, when we saw the very young William and very young Prince Harry walking behind. It will bring back those memories. Let's now look at the Sun. Welcome home, Mom is their very simple headline. Again, the same image, but you wanted to look at this story inside, back with her family.
Yes, this was really the first time I think they had a moment to be a family since the Queen's passing on Thursday. They have all been playing those respective roles. We talked about Princess Anne earlier, we've talking about King Charles, but this shows all of the members of the family, her children, her grandchildren, then people like Zara Mike Tyndall. Zara Tyndall obviously is the daughter of Princess Anne, Princesses Eugenie and Beatrice there, the Duke of York as well. All of them together. It's being reported that this is the first time that this close cohort of the royal family have all joined together since the marriage of Harry and Meghan back in 2018. So I think a really poignant moment. And just one other poignant image on the next page. Lots of reporting of the Queen's final flight. There's a picture from 1952 here of Her Majesty's first flight back to London following the death of her father.
Yeah. So many poignant pictures and images that we have seen since last Thursday. So now we're on to the Daily Telegraph. The final homecoming is its front page headline. Yes,
and we'll kind of zip into page 5 here, because there's so much going on. If you wander around London, it's remarkable, it's unprecedented how much has swung into action. Barriers, fencing, policing, security, you name it. But one piece here that's been picked up by the Telegraph: horses have had to be trained specially for that procession that we saw earlier, those pictures earlier. Accustomed to showers of flowers, it says here, that soldiers have had to pretend to sob next to the horses to get them used to different noises. They've had flags thrown in their direction. And interestingly, and this was the thing that was very notable yesterday morning, watching the rehearsal, was the pacing of it. It was very slow. And they note here, Sergeant Jenks is quoted saying that it's a tall order for these horses. They are having to walk at half the speed they normally would to do the procession.
And of course, the late Queen would know all about that. Her passion was horses, and the training of them and the care and the riding, and it was so clear and evident. And yes, it's a lot, isn't it, in terms of the logistics, the preparations, all that's involved to get ready for the state funeral, which is on Monday, of course. There are other stories grabbing headlines. We sort of just mentioned that. The Financial Times, for example, as you would expect, looking at the story that was the big story on Thursday morning last week, before we heard news that the Queen was extremely ill at lunchtime. In the morning, it was all about the new Prime Minister's plans to help those who need it when it comes to energy. FT pointing out, for businesses, it's not so clear what's ahead.
No, and they say that it's facing delays, access to that energy support package there. The 28 million households as well that were also supposed to be supported, and that all stopped. I'm sure it's continuing behind the scenes,
well,
but a
the
lot of that
government's actually been making it clear from October 1st, the support for households does start. that happens regardless of what's been going on this week, and the fact that everything is seemingly on hold until after the state funeral. But for businesses, the FT is pointing out it's not so clear and yet critical.
Totally. And it also highlights the fact that how young this government is. It's only 2 days old, and the roles that they've had to step into. We saw Penny Mordaunt taking part in the Accession Council. She's only been in the role 2 days. Liz Truss, the Prime Minister, 2 days. And they're now faced with this huge national event, a global event, and also running the country at the same time.
Yeah, at a time when the economy, it would seem, is on the brink of recession. Thank you, Gareth, for talking us through today's papers, some of the stories inside the papers and the front pages, of course.